Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, a very warm welcome to our panel, to our session this morning, which is the session 2, ASEAN in the New World Order, Forging Partnerships, Enhancing ASEAN Centrality. Yeah, so in view of that, you know, we are in we're short of time actually, because we need to finish. I'm told that we need to finish by 12:15. Yeah, so I will just go through very quickly. Yeah, my method will be to allow our each speaker to give their 3 to 5 minutes presentation, short presentation, and hopefully it's just like 3 to 4 minutes. Then after that, I'm hoping that we have enough time to go for a round of questions. Yeah, because each one of you is talking from your own area of expertise, and it'll be very interesting to hear your feedback. And so to set the context, I'm going to speak quickly, like our last lady speaker, Rupa Chanda, like she did a very quick summary of everything. Okay, the session will strongly focus on 3 key ideas: strengthening ASEAN centrality, enhancing ASEAN's relationship with its dialogue partners, and how ASEAN can benefit further from trade agreements. Centrality can be seen as the objective of making ASEAN the dominant body for international powers to negotiate in the Asian-Pacific region. As an extension, centrality also promotes the objective for ASEAN to be a highly relevant hub for organizations in the East Asian region, such as the ASEAN Plus 3 and East Asian Summit. There is one natural question that surfaces. How can ASEAN maintain and reinforce the centrality in the face of large geopolitical events affecting the ASEAN region today? On the forefront, the Russian-Ukraine conflict has been linked to negative economic pressures, not just within ASEAN, but across many different international communities. Additionally, it's also hard to ignore the risk of polarization between different ASEAN member states in the near future, depending on how they individually form agreements with ASEAN's dialogue partners. Thus, our session today aims to discuss and explores solutions to the threats undermining long-term ASEAN centrality. In relation to this, it is also in ASEAN's interest in maintaining the centrality by reviewing and improving its trade agreements between ASEAN member states and between ASEAN and its dialogue partners. Lastly, it is also the benefit of ASEAN's centrality by brainstorming solutions to promote a more involved society within each of ASEAN's member states. I'm confident that we can bypass the sensitive aspect of today's discussion and have a fruitful exploration of problems facing ASEAN today and real solutions to combat these issues. So I will just move on to our first speaker, the Honorable Nath Dhakal. A very warm welcome to you. The Honorary Nath Dhakal is the chair of International Association of the Parliamentary of Peace, IAPP for Asia Pacific region, and he is a former Minister, Peace and Reconstruction in the government of Nepal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jessie Tang, our excellent moderator, fellow panelists, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is great pleasure and honor to be here. So thank you so much for the organizer and supporter of this forum. So as you are given 5 minutes, so in order to keep time, so I think better I go through my written text, then later I'll come back when there is question and answer session. So in this session, we are delighted to focus on the new geopolitical and geostrategic challenges in the region. The ASEAN is comprised of individually strong nations, but we are even stronger when we are integrated and united. Therefore, the only way to face the issues that plague the ASEAN is not just by building our respective nations individually, but also enhancing ASEAN centrality and presenting a stronger front as an association. Although it is an unfortunate fact that we need to recognize that inequality exists within and between the countries in the ASEAN. As an association, the ASEAN has a great potential to lead the world and pave the way forward to a new age. But first, we need to go back to our roots. ASEAN cannot succeed even if one member state is left behind. Therefore, we need to be more inclusive in our approach and incentivize each member state to contribute to the well-being of the region. This also means giving extra help to member states that may need it. Each member state must assess its own of course, continuous dialogue within ASEAN and our partner is helpful, but more importantly, we need to follow up with action. Therefore, the systems and institutions within ASEAN should allow and encourage partnership among the member states and with other partners. The system should also encourage free trade, intercultural exchange, and other ways of enhancing partnership. It is no secret that multilateral and bilateral trade agreements between the economies of parties involved. However, for these to be successful, we need to ensure that the principles of justice and fairness are practiced in these agreements. I'd like to stress the importance of educating the youth about ASEAN. The youth is our future, and if we want our youth to value ASEAN and its principles, they should be educated about the importance of ASEAN. Probably even we can consider to integrate the ASEAN curriculum in ASEAN school system. In the preamble of ASEAN Charter, there is a commitment to three basic values, namely the principles of democracy, the rule of law, and the good governance. But the Kofi Annan, former UN Secretary General, he said that universal values are also more acutely needed in this age of globalization than ever before. But again, these values need to be defined clearly and precisely. Traditional family values are root of our Asian civilization. So I hope that ASEAN will not sideline these precious values in the modern society. So where do we go from here? Our attitude about governing and governance must be expanded. Yes, good governance involves financial, judicial, legislative, and executive responsibilities, but it is also includes promoting, defending, and protecting the institutions of the family and the freedom of religion. So may I be so bold as to propose the ASEAN incorporate an interreligious council within its framework. I would like to point out that the African Union is seriously considering that will likely adopt such proposal. I would also like to note the importance of incorporating civil society and government partnership to truly pave the way forward for inclusive development and peace. Allow me to mention some important points from the resolution of UPF's World Summit 2022 held in last month in Seoul, Korea, also actively participated by Asian Vision Institute and many other countries in the world. The resolution called for the development of Universal Peace Charter, which was also mentioned by His Excellency Soksipana this morning. The development of the Asia-Pacific Union, like the European Union and African Union, which will bring the nations of the region together in a shared forum dedicated to peace and prosperity for all nations. And the development of a Mekong Peace Park based in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, as a symbol of peace and human development. So I truly believe that these projects will make a remarkable contribution on regional cooperation. So I believe this would address the topic of the session, forging partnership to enhance the ASEAN centrality. So I thank one more time on behalf of IAPP, a project of the Universal Peace Federation founded by Father and Mother Moon, and I am here also to represent our Director General, Dr. In Young Ho. So I conclude my remarks here. So back to you, moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Excellency. Okay, I will just move on to the next speaker because I'll give my comments and questions. Hopefully we have time for that after this round. And so our next speaker will be His Excellency Suos Yara, MP. He is the chairman of the Commission on Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation, Media and Information, National Assembly of Cambodia. Unfortunately, he's not present with us physically because he is traveling currently. So let us air his pre-recorded video. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael Yeo, founders and chairman, ASEAN Leadership and Partnership Forum. Chairman of ASEAN Business Advisory Councils and the President of Cambodia Chamber of Commerce. Excellency Dr. Soksipana, Senior Advisor of the Royal Government of Cambodia and Chairman of the Board of Directors of the ASEAN Vision Institute. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, please allow me to apologize for not being able to join you in person due to an urgent task. I would like to take this opportunity to extend my sincere appreciation to the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, the KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific, and the ASEAN Vision Institute for co-organizing this 2022 ASEAN Leadership and Partnership Forum. I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to Samdech Techo Prime Minister Hun Sen on his acceptance as the first patron of the newly established ASEAN Economic Clubs. I also welcome the initiative on the Green Economic Zone, which is in line with the ASEAN endeavor to form a new Green Deal in the region. The Asia-Pacific has entered a period of profound change set off by shift in the power balance as well as by the adjustment of strategy and policy setting by the regional player. Regional power shifts continue to evolve at fast speed with immense pressure on ASEAN and its member states. The proliferation of Indo-Pacific strategy has put ASEAN in a strategic dilemma. Although ASEAN stands to benefit from being the blueprint of the Indo-Pacific, the regional grouping is facing mounting challenges for the following reason. First, ASEAN risks losing its driving seat when it comes to the construction of the regional architecture and the initiation into regional rules and norms. That explains ASEAN prompt action leading to the adoption of the AOIP. Second, there are various visions on the IP. Many in the region perceive that some IP strategies are exclusive and security focused, while ASEAN approach to the IP is development oriented, inclusive, transparent, rule-based, and above all cooperative without targeting any specific country. Therefore, reconciling the AOIP with other IP strategy would be challenging. Third, as IP strategy are being advanced, various multilateral frameworks have been initiated and promoted. It is not clear whether those frameworks are the building blocks of ASEAN-centric multilateralism and to what extent ASEAN convening power is affected by the enterprises. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have embarked upon a new world order. Therefore, no one is safe unless everyone is safe. In the Asia-Pacific, ASEAN centrality has been a bedrock of regional multilateralism. Therefore, we must double down their effort to maintain and promote the centrality by strengthening its unity internally, exercising neutrality and fairness externally, and being proactive in being an open, inclusive, rule-based regional architectures. External partners shall be genuine in embracing ASEAN centrality. They cannot just pay a lip service to the term, but need to value the ASEAN-led mechanism, respect ASEAN internal processes, and uphold its principle, rule, and norm, especially those that are enshrined in the TAC and the ASEAN Charter and the AOIP. ASEAN is not all about security. This is the main reason behind the building of ASEAN community based on three pillars: political security, economic, and social cultural pillar. On economic integration, for instance, ASEAN has been the key driver on the rule-based trading arrangement in the region. Through the formation of ASEAN Plus 3 trade agreement, and early this year, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, ASEP, between ASEAN and 5 of its major trading partners came into force. With support from the ASEAN member states and partners, Cambodia will be pleased to host the secretariat of this biggest free trade agreement. As a rule-based regional organization, ASEAN has strived to uphold the rule of law, especially the UN charters, the ASEAN Charter, and the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. In this regard, IPA is considering to establish an e-library to store all laws of ASEAN member states and its dialogue partners as a response to the need for legal knowledge in a fast-moving world. As the host of the 43rd IPA General Assembly this November, Cambodia will push this idea forward. To this end, we would like to seek full support from the government of ASEAN and the dialogue partner. On that note, I wish the forum a great success. For our international guests, please enjoy the rest of your stay in the Kingdom of Cambodia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to His Excellency Suos Yara. So our next speaker will be His Excellency Kunihiko Hirabayashi, who will also be joining us online. Welcome, Excellency.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and the distinguished panelists and participants. I'm very honored to be here. The allocated time is relatively short as compared with a very complicated agenda. I would like to emphasize the following prioritized 3 points. Firstly, putting people of ASEAN at the center of ASEAN's centrality agenda. While ASEAN's normative policy of engaging all major power still have value, it needs a more long-term and focused approach to respond to the changing new world order, because threat and challenge toward protecting ASEAN centrality has been expanding not to only the new geopolitical and the geostrategical challenge, but also interlinked socio-economic challenges such as another pandemic, environment degradation, and climate crisis, which could amplify the risk of a new world order. One of the good examples could be seen ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, or AOIP. AOIP envisages ASEAN centrality as the underlying principle for promoting cooperation and partnership with wider third party and the middle power partner, such as Japan, with ASEAN-led mechanism for dialogue and the implementation of inter-Pacific cooperation. AOIP undertakes cooperation in a broad range of areas, including connectivity, active aging, UN SDGs, as well as climate change and disaster risk reduction, which could significantly promote ASEAN's people's buy-in on ASEAN centrality. Secondly, I fully agree with Honorable Dhakal from Nepal, investing young people to promote mutual prosperity and also create sustainable partnership. It is important to develop multi-layered realm with dialogue partner. Multi-layered realm includes so-called track-to diplomacy and multi-track diplomacy, and also include multi-generational dialogue. According to the recent Japanese think tank survey by the Hakuhodo Institute of Life or Living ASEAN, the Generation Z citizens in ASEAN, those who were born between 1997 and 2012, accounted for about 24% of ASEAN's population are more connected with outside via their smartphones. The survey also showed a more democratic viewpoint among Generation Z members in ASEAN, who are keen to solve the social challenge caused by previous generations through valuing themselves, their families, and the other around them equally, while tolerating each other's differences. I strongly believe the generations and the following generation can bring a strength, the stable, peaceful order in the region. Thirdly, we should promote inclusive, resilient, sustainable trade through multilateral and bilateral trade agreement. There is increasing evidence that well-planned and inclusive trade policy and their practices can positively impact sustainable poverty reduction. Taking the RCEPs coming into effect as an opportunity, the realization of open, free, inclusive, resilient, rule-based, and sustainable free trade among ASEAN member states and dialogue partners should be supported and monitored, and the importance of their value is advocated effectively with evidence. The realization of inclusive, resilient, and sustainable RCEP would be also seen as an excellent and a tangible outcome of ASEAN centrality. Distinguished panelists and participants, last but not least, I'd like to inform you that 2023 makes the 50th anniversary of the ASEAN-Japan Friendship and Cooperation, and we'll hold a commemorative summit meeting to raise ASEAN-Japan relations to a new stage. I have observed that Japan has a strategic partner of choice for ASEAN, making its every effort to build equal partnership with ASEAN by harnessing mutual confidence and trust based on heart-to-heart. By all working together toward a future of peace and prosperity for all, we can make a bright region together. I'm very confident there is a trust and empathy shared among us. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yeah. That's excellent. Thank you very much, His Excellency Kunihiko Hirabayashi. So after this, we move on to our fourth speaker, Dr. Dino Pati Jalal. He is the founder and chairman, Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, and former Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Indonesia. Welcome, Dr. Dino.
Can I borrow your mic? Because my mic doesn't work. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jesse. I think, ASEAN is entering a dangerous geopolitical landscape that we haven't seen since the early 1990s when the Cold War collapsed. Yeah. The world order that we are facing now is one that is divided, disoriented, meaning it's hard to focus on the big issues, and dangerous. And then there's a world order marked by rivalries that sometimes can involve brinkmanship, as we've seen in Taiwan, for example. And it's a world order where, because of the division and rivalries, we should see the erosion of multilateralism, the declining appetite for international cooperation, certainly growing mistrust and resentment, and diminishing space for dialogue. So even when they're present, they don't talk. You know, we are seeing this. Indonesia is chairing G20 now, yeah, and the appetite to even talk or even smile on the other side is not there, and is producing an intellectually intolerant environment. You know, I was just in a Western country, for example, and say, hey, we're gonna do a seminar on this, and who's coming? Well, we're gonna get some Chinese speakers. Oh, no, I'm not going. You know. And these are academics where you're supposed to be open-minded and talk to everyone, right? It is also systemic. Yeah? So it's not just strategic and political interests, but it's systemic. And it's to an extent where everything the other side does is wrong, right? So if China were to invent cancer, cure for cancer, and give it freely to everybody, they're not going to get congratulations, right? So it's really an unhealthy and toxic psychological environment. I don't believe, although it is ideological, I don't believe that it is so, because it is so marked by double standards, right? Oh, the Communist Party is bad, you know, the ideology is bad. But hey, you know, on the other side of the world, there are countries with ideologies that are not similar to you, but you embrace them openly, right? So this world order is full of not just division, and rivalries, but a lot of double standards, right? So that's one point. I'll say this to you: ASEAN cannot deliver world peace, right? Why? ASEAN does not have influence in the Middle East. We don't have influence in Africa. We don't have influence much in Europe or even Northeast Asia or Latin America, right? So let's be frank about this, right? We may be the building blocks of the greater world peace, but ASEAN itself should be realistic that our ambition should not be the one to deliver world peace. But what can we do is deliver peace within Southeast Asia, because this is where we call the shots. This is where we establish the architects for the region. This is where we have the skills. This is the region that we know. So in my view, what ASEAN should attempt to do in the midst of all these geopolitical recession globally is at least to make sure that within our region, these rivalries are minimized and managed, right? To the best interests of the regional countries. So I think that's the name of the game. And in that context, let me just say a couple of points. I know I only have 5 minutes. One is we should understand that compared to 30, 40 years or 50 years ago, ASEAN now is in a different place than before, right? What does that mean? That means that we have a lot more leverage than before. Yeah, I remember Indonesia was a poor country before, and we used to be very amenable to pressures from foreign countries whenever on any given issues, right? But Indonesia now is the 16th largest economy, and we are a member of G20. We're obviously one of the largest countries of ASEAN. So Indonesia's leverage now is different, dealing with external pressures. And ASEAN, in my view, is also that way. You know, we're no longer the ASEAN of 1967. This is the ASEAN 10 with economic power, with political and diplomatic clout as well. Secondly, in my view, I know we talk about rivalries and competition, but I do think competition is good for the region, right? I mean, China is the largest trading partner for most of ASEAN countries, and the US has been eclipsed years ago by that, right? And I hope the US catches up, right? I hope Japan catches up. I hope Europe catches. I hope everybody tries to catch up on trade, investment, tourism, technology, and so on, education. Because if they do compete, who wins? Us, right? So I hope they compete for peace and progress, and they try to beat one another, because the winner can only be the Southeast Asian. Of course, everybody else wins. But competition, not necessarily bad. Competition for peace and progress is good, right? And the third point is, look, in the past, a lot of external powers try to do two things: conquest or subjugation to Southeast Asian countries. In Indonesia, there have been many attempts to unseat the government by foreign powers, and I'm sure in much of Southeast Asia this has happened as well. But today, that is not the game. Yeah, Southeast Asia is really not the target for that. What is different now is that the ambition is really about having political influence that is greater relative to the others, right? So if you look at the United States policy towards Southeast Asia, or Chinese policy towards Southeast Asia, the game is not really to subjugate us, but for the China to have more influence relative to the United States, and vice versa, right? So I think that is the game that that they're playing. Yeah. Sorry, I just lost my page here. And with regard to ASEAN centrality, look, I think it's very important that we keep our place in the middle. Yeah, we keep ourselves grounded at the center of things, right? I know we keep saying, okay, we got to maintain ASEAN centrality, but the key to maintaining ASEAN centrality is that we cannot be involved in any of these major powers competition, because the moment ASEAN becomes anti-China or anti-US or anti-any of the major powers, we lose that center spot. Yeah, and that center spot is what makes ASEAN particularly important in addressing many of the regional problems that we are facing. But I do believe that ASEAN face a particular challenge, right? ASEAN talks about rules-based world order, right? And that is almost in every speech of ASEAN leaders and foreign ministers, right? But the question is, how do we talk about that and ignore what happens in Ukraine, right? There is, I mean, if you look at one event internationally that really violates the international law, UN Charter, the principles of independence, sovereignty, national unity, then there's no other violation clearer than Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We don't have to take sides in the conflict and be against Russia, but at least in my view, ASEAN as an organization that is based on rules and norms should be able to tell clearly to the Russians, hey, what you're doing is wrong, right? And what you're doing puts us in difficulties. In Indonesia, the food price is rising, and so on, right? So if we can't say that honestly to Russia, and by the way, we say that to the Americans all the time, right? We say when the Americans invaded Iraq, we said, hey, you know, we can't accept that, right? So, but I think ASEAN needs, again, while we maintain our ASEAN centrality, should have the capacity to tell Russia that what they're doing is against the rules-based order that ASEAN has been calling for. Maybe I'll stop there. I know you're getting nervous because everyone has 5 minutes, but I'll add more comments during the discussions. Yeah.
Do I pass? Oh, okay. Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers for inviting Asian Development Bank again. And my name is Alfredo. Alfredo, you can call me. It's a very long family name, the other one. Yes, I'm going to agree. I mean, I come from an organization, of course, that is neutral, and is politically neutral, and an organization that, of course, believes very much in regional cooperation and integration. And also, we have been actually looking at ASEAN and the central role that ASEAN has played in economics and politically in the region for many decades already, and supporting that. We believe that is a central piece, really, of the stability of Asia. It has been, and I think it will continue being. But I agree with the previous speaker and other speakers that I think the risks that we are seeing now are huge. There's huge risks that are affecting and could affect even more seriously to ASEAN. We saw some risk of fragmentation. Those risks are still there, and I think they could be exacerbated if the political situation and the tensions between the United States and China, of course with Russia also, but especially between China and the United States, will start dividing the world, both politically, economically, and technologically also. This could also create very difficult dilemmas for ASEAN. Internally, within each of the countries, I think it will be very important that you talk and go together wherever you want to go, and then also that you are able to maintain that central role, as other speakers said, neutral and playing with all. And it's not only, by the way, only the United States and China. I think all countries want to collaborate with ASEAN. We have heard Japan, incredibly active and always a good partner of ASEAN, but Korea also, they have their own centers for ASEAN. No? They are definitely wanted to work more. I had a lot of conferences from India, which is always wanted to come and work more with ASEAN, and of course from the US also, they really want. So I would recommend definitely to keep that central role. There are three ways, I think, in which this central role could be kept. Let me mention the three. Number one, you need to continue, I think, the integration process of ASEAN. This is not finished. You are at the middle of it. There has been many positive things by creating the ASEAN Economic Community and launching, but there are many things still that needs to be done. Trade liberalization has been very successful, no doubt, but there's still non-tariff barriers. There's not enough done on trading services. There's still a lot of protection, internal protections in investment. And there are many, many other areas only on the economic arena. It's not only about economics. The ASEAN social community is one that very few people really mention sometimes. And it has become very important, especially as we have seen when there is a health crisis or when we have an environmental crisis, which is absolutely with us now and is going to become just worse. This is going to require also much more internal cooperation within ASEAN. So continuing with this and deepening this will become very fundamental. I think in order to do that, you need to have lots of leadership in the countries, and you need maybe to put resources to, for example, strengthen the ASEAN Secretariat. I know how hard colleagues in the ASEAN Secretariat work, but I think they need more resources, more money. You need to attract talent into that Secretariat. And it's good also to have initiatives like the one that you're launching today. But the ASEAN Secretariat remains an important piece. And I always hear some countries would like to give more resources to them, some others maybe not. Whatever it is, you need to have some people working in the details of that, of the agenda. No? So that's the first, deepen. If you don't deepen your own cooperation, it will be very difficult. And that, by the way, also in the political arena, as I think my previous speaker mentioned, having some clear opinions both on internal problems. I don't want to refer which one, but everybody can imagine which one you have at the moment, very serious internal problem, but also externally also speaking with one voice. I think the second part is, of course, developing the excellent relations that you have already with the +3 and beyond. You're going to have RCEP. I think this is one of the best things in this very negative news that we are receiving from all over the world and crisis after the other. You have been able to finally sign the RCEP. And this is a fantastic news. I think this creates enormous opportunities. I'm not going to go deeper into all those opportunities, but in ADB we have been studying. My previous colleague actually has been referring to some of these elements. Enormous amount of opportunities. Again, lots of work to be done under RCEP. is still an agreement that could be done better. And I think the negotiations must continue doing, and you need to implement, you need to bring private sector to make them aware of that, about RCEP, because they still don't know very well about RCEP. They are not using, as also one of the speakers in the last session presented. But it's even beyond that. We're going to have the East Asia Summit here in Cambodia, hopefully, and you are still at the center of that. So I think ASEAN is a well-respected, very well-respected partner. And also, you don't have enemies. I couldn't mention really any country or any big power that is the enemy of ASEAN. Actually, it's exactly the opposite. And nowadays, that's a lot to say. That's a lot to say, because I think, which country don't have enemies now? There are a few only. But none of you, when you go together, at least as a region, you don't have, I believe, any enemies. This is a very strength point, the respect that you are attracting from everyone, the wish, and as, of course, your economic power has been also enormously improved. You are growing very fast, and that also will increase the influence of ASEAN. And then the last and third point is, I think you could do better and more, and there are some good initiatives in talking together, speaking together with a single voice in many of the international big events. You have the COP, you have WTO, you have even the G20, even if not all the countries are there, but you have the representation somehow by others. So I think in many of these events, ASEAN could speak in one voice. In my own organization, AEDB or the ASEAN Infrastructure Bank or the World Bank boards, it could be good that ASEAN sometimes speak with one voice. This will enhance that centrality role of ASEAN. You can have tough discussions among yourself internally, but then go outside and speak with a single voice. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting, Mr. Alfredo. So we move on to our next speaker, Dato' Ramesh Kodaimal. He is the co-chair, ASEAN India Business Council, or AIBC, Malaysia. Welcome, Dato' Ramesh.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to KSI for inviting us today at this platform to give our views on what we particularly feel that the world is moving into a different stage. We all can see that, we all can understand that, but some of us do not voice out to really say what is actually happening. And I think it's very important for us at this point to see what is happening around. We are talking of the Russian-Ukraine conflict here. We are looking at US-Taiwan conflict around. We are looking at World Trade Agreements being signed, and some countries are not joining in. But we in ASEAN, we feel that we are okay. We are moving collectively together. As the first moderator, Dato' Veera Hassan, said that if you have 10 sticks, you must tie up 10 sticks together and not let them break. It's harder to break. Individually, we are weak. Collectively, we are strong. And this momentum has to be kept. I'm going to speak something on the ASEAN-India relationship, which is actually very important to us. India is actually moving forward, and we can see that within a few years, India will be either the third or fourth largest economy in the world. And we can see that. It's the largest democracy in the world. We also are seeing that by next year, India will have the largest population in the world, overbeating China. All this being said, and we in ASEAN have got our relationship with India for centuries. Whenever we speak relationship with India, we speak of our relationship of the past, of our culture, of moving together within the ASEAN area. But somehow or the other, it's very strange, so far, we have not actually worked and benefited a lot from this side. You see, we have tied up our ASEAN-India Free Trade Agreement 12 years ago, but our trade figures have not actually increased. Last year it was only 91 billion, and most of the trade, 73 billion, was from the ASEAN side on the commodity trade. So we see that there is something which we are lacking. We were inviting India to join the RCEP. India has not decided to join in yet. We from AIBC have always been speaking about it at every platform, but the reason is everyone comes up with strange ideas. Oh, because of geopolitics, because of things of this nature, India is not coming into RCEP. But let me just tell you, yesterday there was a meeting of Indo-Pacific economic framework in the US. And India opted out on the trade and digitization first pillar agreement. So what does that tell you? India is taking a stand. And we in ASEAN should explore and see that how we can work and rope in India to be with us and move forward. They have the numbers, they are growing, and we can see that things are happening there. And yet, what is it that is not wanting India to join in the World Trade Agreements? There must be something. Is it that the government doesn't want? Is it that the local industries are not prepared for it at this stage because they need some time more to develop themselves before they open up to the world? These are the questions. We must work on some research, try to understand where we are heading to. Our ASEAN-India Free Trade Agreement, which we signed up 12 years ago, India was the first to sign up a unilateral agreement with ASEAN. And up till today, we have not reviewed it yet. We are trying our very best. I think it's in the process. But we have not reviewed it yet. But in the meantime, India has already got a bilateral with Malaysia, with Singapore, is moving for a bilateral with Indonesia. It has got a service sector bilateral agreement with the Philippines, and they have got some agreements with Thailand. So is it that they prefer to do bilateral than a unilateral agreement? These are the questions we in ASEAN must sit, ask ourselves, and understand where are we heading to. If we do not tap now, the coming years ahead, when India moves up, it will be more difficult for us to tap them. I think we must sit and explore and see that how we can take advantage, or we can work together to improve the ASEAN-India trade. We have already got our numbers with China, fantastic. So why don't we start looking at this side now? We try to focus on this and move forward. We are having the AEM in Siem Reap on the 16th. We are having a consultation meeting with the ministers and the Indian ministers. We will point this out again. We need to actually find some solutions where we can enhance our trade with India on a fast track. Because I think India is becoming a production hub for many things. Foreign FDIs are coming into India. Singapore is the biggest investor from ASEAN in India. So these are the clues which we have, and now we have to look at it, and I'm very sure that we all are able to do it, because this is a critical period. The COVID period is there. I always ask myself a question. I said, within the last 2 years, China was totally locked down. India with the same numbers have opened up. So there is something around the corner which we must try to explore, understand what is happening. The pharmaceutical industry in India is fantastic. I think ASEAN should tap on that, start working together. I think our ASEAN businessmen should explore working with the Indians in setting up some sort of manufacturing plant within ASEAN and India, where we will also secure ourselves in any form of pandemic which comes in the future. I think these are the things we should now look at working together. These are just my suggestions. I think some will have their own suggestion, but I think it's a great idea for us to take a step forward, work with India, and see that how we from the ASEAN side can benefit with a population of 1.4 billion around the world. Because I always say, we in ASEAN are between the two arms, left and right. We have China with us, we have India with us, ASEAN is in the center. 2.8 billion with 600 over million, we have a population of 3.5 billion, close to half the population of the world. And this is our strength. And we have the advantage of it. The Chinese diaspora is in ASEAN, the Indian diaspora is in ASEAN, and if we don't take advantage of it now, this moment, I think we will be slowed down by others. Thank you. With that, I hope I have passed on some message across.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramesh Kodaimal. So we'll move on to our last speaker, Dr. Sotarith Chap, who is the Senior Research Fellow and Board Member, Cambodia Institute for Cooperation and Peace, or CICP. Welcome, Dr. Sotarith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We have talked a lot about ASEAN centrality. So I think ASEAN at present time, we have faced old and new challenge. The challenge is so many. For example, like we have a lot of geopolitics rivalry between the superpower. For example, like Ukraine war. It's very dangerous to the world as well, because what happened if NATO, join hand with Ukraine, we don't know what happened. And then the others, like nuclear proliferation on the Korean North and Korea, and then a lot of cross-strait tension recently, and of course, Myanmar issue as well. So the other challenge also related to not only ASEAN but the world as well, like climate change. And we are also face the challenge that we are competing among ourselves, because there is a common interest and the individual country interest. For example, like in trade agreement, in free trade agreement, and in, for example, like transport or even the import of agricultural product, there is a lot of non-trade barrier that is still going on, So ASEAN, we still have a lot of differences. Difference in religion, difference in political structure, difference in many things. For example, like in transport sector, Thailand and Cambodia, we have different size of driving car. Some country, the driving wheel is on the right, but some countries on the left. So there's a lot of issue that we are ongoing inside ourselves. So there is a lot of things that how can ASEAN continue to be playing the role as a centrality, for example, or we can say in the driving seat in many international and regional and sub-regional affairs. So, but so far ASEAN have presented a lot of success and a lot of results. For example, like Cambodia, we are a small country and small economy, but we still can do a lot after we being member of ASEAN. We can hold 3 summit already, host country 3 already. I remember the 2002, 2012, and now 2022. And there is a successful host, I can say. So we are proud to host as ASEAN chair. ASEAN, as a Cambodia chair, Cambodia chair this as a country of pro-trade economy. Cambodia have gained a lot of benefit from being member of ASEAN. So this is a showcase that ASEAN, not only one, but we have 10. So we can play a lot of role, in international arena as a platform for negotiation, as a platform, as a friend of everybody, because for example, Cambodia, we are friend of Russia, we are friend of China, we are friend of the United States. And for example, recently in AMM, ASEAN Ministerial Meeting, you can see all foreign minister, from super country come together to meet here in Cambodia. And there will be more in ASEAN Defense Ministry meeting, in ASEAN Economic Ministry meeting this week, I think. And of course, in November, there will be a big event. It's a summit, ASEAN Summit and related summits. So what can we ASEAN do, to keep momentum as a centrality, as a platform to solve a lot of problems. But as my colleague say earlier, that ASEAN is not a perfect organization. We are still a lot of shortage, a lot of shortcoming that we continue to solve our differences, to solve the gaps between the old and the new members. We have a big gaps, but we can work together very well, but still not perfect. So in order to continue to keep momentum as centrality, ASEAN centrality, I think we have to make trust, not only among ourselves, but trust to other partners, to the world. And we have to respect the principle of mutual respect, mutual interest, so that we can gain a win-win situation, even in, for example, like RCEP. Cambodia is I think is a role model as a pro-trade country. I remember when I speak in the international conference, a lot of friends ask me, why Cambodia become member of WTO before Vietnam? And my short answer is very simple. Because Cambodia have nothing to protect. We liberalize all sectors in trade, except electricity and clean water supply. Only two sectors that we, and defense, of course, defense manufacturing. So otherwise, we provide all liberalization. For example, like education, hospital, medical care, even media. We liberalize. A foreigner can own a media organization in Cambodia. So that's why we negotiate very fast, and then we become member of the WTO before Vietnam and before Nepal as well. So another thing, I think we have to do a lot of role player, to solve the world problem that arising from many challenges. And I think that I add to many things that our friend talked before, so I don't touch anymore. I stop my comment now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Satare. I would have loved to ask all our panel speakers some questions, but unfortunately we are really short of time. So I would like to just wrap up, do about a 1 or 2 minute wrap up. Okay, thank you to all our panelists for sharing their insights regarding the issues facing ASEAN and how ASEAN as a regional community can improve itself. As some of the speakers have highlighted, raising a new generation of problem solvers within the ASEAN community is imperative to tackle the issues it faces in the new world order. Young leaders must be fostered to engage with the long-term crisis ASEAN is facing, such as climate change, so that ASEAN centrality can adapt well to a rapidly changing world. As suggested, the ASEAN community is encouraged to harbor healthier democratic systems to not only build a new generation of leaders, but also to strengthen the relationship between civil society and its governments for a more functional ASEAN administrative body. In terms of economics and trade, our speakers have emphasized the need for a more balanced payoff between ASEAN and its dialogue partners in bilateral agreements. ASEAN will no doubt enjoy a stronger relationship with its dialogue partners such as India through this principle. In relation to this, the discussion of the advancing integration of ASEAN's economics is also highly important and a stepping stone for ASEAN on the global stage. However, even within this potential, we are also reminded that ASEAN must navigate between the AOIP and Indo-Pacific strategy to identify a vision that best supports its centrality and relationship with its dialogue partners. Ensuring a unified approach, ASEAN can not only address challenges together at a regional level, but also utilize international partnerships to pursue greater success in this region. With this, I'd like to thank everyone for a very fruitful session this morning. And thank you to our guests, and thank you, our audience, for sitting through our session. Thank you.